She abandoned me to be with her lover and revealed that the child she was expecting was not mine. My pregnant wife abandoned me, telling me she was fed up with me and that the child she was expecting wasn't mine. But time showed her that karma always collects its debt. Recently, I learned something that I'm still struggling to process. My ex-wife abandoned her daughter. The poor child, just a baby, was left adrift. And the most painful part isn't the news itself, but remembering that this child was supposed to be my daughter. To understand how we got to this point, we have to go back almost 2 years, when my wife, Lucretia, and I had been married for just over a year and a half. I remember she gave me the news that afternoon. She was pregnant. She said it with a mix of nerves and contained joy. I, for my part, couldn't help but smile. It was something I had wanted for a long time. The entire family celebrated the news, at least, mine did. On her side, the reaction was colder. Her parents had always wanted her to finish college before thinking about starting a family. We were both 28 years old, but she had had to pause her studies for financial reasons. It wasn't easy, and for a long time, I promised her that when our situation improved, we would save so she could resume her career. The pregnancy, although not in our immediate plans, seemed like a blessing. A sudden turn, yes, but the kind you welcome with hope. I felt prepared, willing to work more, to do whatever was necessary. During the first few weeks, Lucretia seemed happy. We planned names, talked about what the baby's room would be like, and even argued over silly things like whether it should be baby blue or mint green. But slowly, something changed. It wasn't sudden, but rather like a shadow gradually covering what we had. It started with small gestures, fewer smiles, short answers, and a look that seemed to drift away whenever I spoke to her. I tried not to make a big deal about it. I thought it was the hormones, the fatigue, or the typical discomforts of pregnancy. Every time I mentioned it, she told me the same thing: don't worry, it's the pregnancy. It will pass. And I believed her. I trusted her, as anyone who loves does, without thinking that love could be turned into a weapon. But that distance kept growing. If I tried to hug her, she would pull away. If I caressed her, she'd say she wasn't in the mood. And if I asked her how she felt, she would respond with irritation. I kept trying, looking for ways to get closer: dinners, small gifts, kind words. Nothing worked. The weeks went on, and my hope began to wear thin. Sometimes she would speak to me in such a sharp tone, it seemed like she hated me. I tried hard to stay calm, reminding myself that I had to take care of the mother of my child, even if she seemed to be rejecting me. Until that day came. It was a Thursday morning. I was leaving for work when I noticed Lucretia in the bedroom, packing things into a suitcase. I asked her what she was doing. She didn't look up. "I'm leaving the house," she said with coldness. "What do you mean you're leaving? Where are you going?" I asked, trying to understand. "To live with the father of my child." I didn't know what to say. I just stared at her, unsure if I had heard correctly. Noticing my silence, she turned to me. "Yes, you heard me. This isn't your child." Those words hung in the air like a slow stab. I didn't react, I couldn't process it. I just looked at her, trying to find any trace of doubt or regret in her face. But there was nothing, only coldness. More than the infidelity, it hurt to lose the child I had already loved before it was even born. It was a cruel truth, but a necessary one. And although it pains me to admit it, I'm grateful it happened then and not after the birth, because if she had waited until then, I probably would have been forced to pay child support for a child that was never mine. She closed the suitcase and headed for the door. Then, something inside me broke. I yelled at her. "How long have you been unfaithful to me?" She stopped. She turned slowly with that haughty look she always put on when she wanted to show she was in control. "I suppose you deserve to know," she said. And with terrifying calm, she added, "When I married you, I was confused. I accepted you because it was what I was supposed to do, the right thing, but I'm fed up now. Every word was like a dull blow to the chest. Then, as she adjusted the strap of the suitcase, she finished. Don't worry about the divorce, it will be simple. We've only been married a year and a half, we don't have assets or children that tie us together. Everything will be quick. She walked to the door, opened it, and just before leaving, she turned one last time. Now you know the truth, so don't look for me anymore. I'll let you know when the documents are ready. Don't be pathetic. And she left. I remember standing there, watching the door close with that dry sound that marked the end of my life as I knew it. I just sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process what had just happened. The following days were a mix of anger and resignation. When I told my parents, they were sorry. Although, I noticed a certain relief in my mother. She had never fully trusted Lucretia. I took refuge in work. It was the only way not to think. For weeks, I told myself she had done me a favor by leaving. Still, at night, a bitter feeling would wash over me not for her, but for the baby. I struggled to understand how someone could act with such coldness, how she could have deceived me for so long. It angered me to think how foolish I had been during the time we were married. She had been an excellent actress. I never once doubted her loyalty or her love. I was blinded. After all that, the months passed. Lucretia kept her word, she had the divorce papers sent to me by mail, and I signed them without protest. The process was quick and uncomplicated, as if our marriage had never existed. No arguments, no attempts at reconciliation, just cold papers sealing the end. Meanwhile, she was already living with her lover. I knew very little about this guy at first, just rumors. Later, I found out he was involved in shady business. I don't know if it was drug trafficking, smuggling, or some other illegal enterprise, but the fact is he earned a lot of money and could give Lucretia a life I could never have afforded. Things seemed to be going well for her. Sometimes someone would show me photos she posted, trips, dinners, new clothes, the classic portrait of a perfect life. I never looked for her or held a grudge. I didn't see myself as a victim. I had simply been dealt a losing hand. I thought the best thing I could do was move on. There was no point in planning revenge. What for? When you understand that love cannot be forced, you also learn that indifference is the most silent punishment. But life, or destiny, or whatever it is, has mysterious ways of settling scores. I didn't have to do anything but watch as time took care of everything. By the time I heard about Lucretia again, the baby had been born. It was a girl. Someone told me she was beautiful, looked just like her. I also learned that Lucretia had married her lover. Everything seemed to indicate that her life had reached its peak. She posted happy messages, family photos, comments full of love. From the outside, anyone would say she was at peace, that she had found her true destiny. Until it all came crashing down. One night, checking the local news, I saw a headline that froze me. Man wounded in shooting in industrial zone. I didn't pay it much mind until I heard the name. It was him, Lucretia's new husband. He had been shot at point-blank range while driving. It was said to be a settling of scores, but it was never known who attacked him or why. The guy survived at first. He was hospitalized in serious condition, and since he was involved in shady things, he had never worried about his life. He had no insurance, no savings, no backup. The hospital bills began to pile up. Lucretia went from happy photos to desperate messages. She asked for help on social media, started fundraisers, begged for anyone to support them. Please, any donation helps, she wrote. I watched in silence. It was like watching a storm that once would have dragged me down, but was now passing in the distance. The man finally died, and with his death, everything she thought was stable collapsed. The bills, the debts, the rent, the life she had built on lice, it all fell on top of her. I learned that she first went to her family for help, but they turned their backs on her. And I understand why. Back when she got pregnant, I had the support of my family. They were also ashamed of what their daughter had done to me. And ironically, just after she moved in with her lover, her own mother had a medical complication. Her family asked her for help, knowing her new husband had money, but she refused. She told them she couldn't take care of everyone. They had to organize fundraisers to pay for the mother's treatment. Now that she was the one who needed support, her family closed their doors to her. I knew this because one of her cousins, with whom I kept in touch, told me everything. He didn't say it with resentment, but with sadness. He told me, she had everything and lost it all to arrogance. I just felt. I understood that karma doesn't forget. A few more weeks passed. I wasn't thinking about her anymore, until one afternoon, there was a knock on my door. It was Lucretia. I didn't recognize her at first. She had lost weight. She had deep dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was unkempt. She was holding the baby in her arms, wrapped in a pink blanket. The baby was sleeping. She, on the other hand, looked on the verge of collapse. "I need to talk to you," she told me, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. I just observed her from the doorway. "Please," she insisted. "I'm not here to argue. I just need help." I didn't let her in. I told her to say what she had to say right there. Between sobs, she told me what I already knew, that her husband had died, that she had no money, that the hospital bills were drowning her. "I just need a loan," she said. "I'll pay you back, little by little, I promise." I answered her bluntly, "No." She looked up, surprised. "Please, don't do this to me." "I'm not doing it to you," I said. "You did this to yourself." She was silent for a few seconds, breathing heavily. "Don't you want to try again?" she asked, her voice so weak I could barely hear it. "I have no interest," I replied. She lowered her head. "You're just going to leave me alone, just like that?" "Just as easily as you left me when it suited you," I said. There was a tense moment. The baby started to stir in her arms. Then she looked at me intently and said something that chilled me, "The baby could be yours." I froze. "What are you saying?" "She's still little. She can still be raised to believe you are her father." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "Do you hear yourself?" I said. "You want me to lie? To pretend again?" "You accepted her before," she replied. "You said you would love her." I felt a knot in my chest. "I accepted her because I thought she was mine," I yelled. She stood up, took a step toward me, and put a hand on my shoulder. "She can be," she said with a repulsive calm. "You just have to accept it. I'll make you part of her life. You can be the father you always dreamed of being." My blood was boiling. I don't know if it was from the manipulation or the pity I felt seeing her like this. I brushed her hand off me and slammed the door in her face. From the other side, I heard her broken voice. "Just think about it. You can be the father you dreamed of being." I heard her walk away slowly, the sound of her footsteps fading down the sidewalk. For a long time, I wondered what would have happened if I had helped her, if it would have changed anything, if that little girl would have had a different life. A few days after that argument, Lucretia returned to my house. "Did you think about it?" she asked without greeting me. Her eyes were red, and her voice sounded desperate. "Don't miss this opportunity. You can do the right thing. You can have a family." I replied without hesitating. "Yes, I thought about it. And I have no intention of taking responsibility for that child." She looked at me with contained fury, as if she didn't understand what I was saying. "But you loved her," she whispered. "I loved the idea of a daughter, not a lie," I told her. "We can change her last name," she insisted. "No one has to know." I was floored. She had lost all sense of boundaries. "No," I repeated. "No means no. Enough, Lucretia. I won't do it. She lowered her head, looked at me for a few more seconds with a mixture of resentment and pleading, and finally left, carrying the baby in the rain. I watched her walk away until her silhouette blurred into the wet street. And that was the last day I saw her. That brings us to a week ago, when I received news I sincerely never expected. Lucretia had abandoned her daughter. A mutual friend told me. At first, I didn't believe him. I thought he was exaggerating or that there was some misunderstanding, but it was true. The story even made the local news. A baby had been found inside a parish church, crawling alone near the altar. The little girl was wearing a jacket far too large for her size and a note written in trembling handwriting. No one knows how long she was in there, but they said a sexton found her crying softly, as if she no longer had the strength to scream. The scene was so absurd it seemed fabricated, but it wasn't. Lucretia's parents, upon finding out, were the first to go. They took charge of the girl without hesitation. They had no choice. She was their granddaughter, even if she had come to them in the saddest, most imaginable way. No one knew where Lucretia was. She disappeared. No calls, no messages, no trace. The police searched for her at the house where she lived before the eviction, but they found nothing of value, just old furniture, broken plates, and clothes thrown on the floor. They say the dwelling reflected the misery she was immersed in. Damp walls, empty boxes, debts everywhere. They tried to reconstruct her last days, but everything was confusing. Some neighbors said they saw her leaving several times with unknown people. Others claimed she had been receiving threats. I don't know what to believe. I understand the hospital debt must have been huge, but I can't understand how she reached that point, how she went from showing off her new life to leaving her daughter in a church. Was it just desperation, or was she involved in something else, like her husband? I have no answers, and perhaps I never will. The police are still searching. There are those who say they saw her in another city, that she changed her name, that she's traveling with dangerous people. Others think she simply couldn't bear the shame and took her own life. Only rumors remain. As for me, I'm not going to lie, I hated Lucretia. I hated her with everything I could hate someone. But time, little by little, extinguished that fire. I hurt for that baby. She's not to blame for anything. She was born in the midst of lies, was used as an excuse, as a manipulation tool, and then left to her fate. Nobody deserves that, especially not a child. Sometimes I think about what she told me that afternoon, you can be the father you dreamed of being. And for a moment, I confess, I'm tempted to imagine it. But I immediately remember everything that happened, the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. And I understand that even if I had wanted to raise that girl, my life would have been forever tied to the person who hurt me the most. And when I think about everything that happened, I can only say that if karma exists, this time it did its job. Because I didn't have to lift a finger. Life took care of putting everything in its place. Update 1. Well, 5 years have passed. Wow, how time flies. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be writing again. I thought my story was over, but life has a curious way of reviving what you think is buried. Lucretia reappeared. Yes. After everything she did, she returned to the city. She was seen walking arm in arm with a guy who, from what people said, had money. Designer clothes, an expensive car, an arrogant attitude. The same smile as always, as if nothing had happened, as if the years had erased her sins. When they told me, I thought that maybe she had changed, that she had at least learned something from everything she'd been through. But I was wrong. Lucretia was still the same. At first, no one understood how she dared to come back. Remember, she still had the pending case for abandoning her daughter. The police arrested her as soon as they confirmed her identity. It was brief, a routine detention. They reviewed the file, and in theory, she should have faced trial. But strangely, they released her very quickly. According to what I heard, the man she was with pulled some strings. He had money, influence, or both. The authorities decided not to proceed with the case, as if suddenly the abandonment of a child wasn't important. The papers went to sleep in some drawer, and she was free again, smiling on the same streets where everyone remembered her story. She didn't visit her parents, nor did she ask a single question about her daughter. And that's what outraged her own family the most. Her mother, already very ill, didn't even want to hear her name. Her father, who was never one for many words, just said, "That is no longer my daughter." But her return was brief, like everything in her life. For the first few months, people saw her out as if nothing was wrong, attending expensive restaurants, showing off a dream life. The guys seemed enchanted with her, spending without limits, buying her clothes, jewelry. It was even rumored that they traveled every weekend. It was the same pattern as always, a new illusion built on appearances. Until, as is her custom, it all fell apart again. No one knows exactly what happened. Some say the guy caught her lying, others, that she got into trouble again with debts and dangerous favors. The truth is, from one day to the next, he disappeared from her side. He left her without warning, without explanations. And with that, Lucretia disappeared again too. She left no trace. She didn't contact anyone again, not even the few acquaintances who still spoke to her out of obligation. Not her parents, not her cousins, not me. No one heard from her again. All that remained was the certainty that wherever she was, destiny was catching up with her again. They say karma is slow, but it always arrives. And in Lucretia's case, it seems life made a point of reminding her, again and again, that what is sown in deceit is harvested in solitude. I don't know if she will ever come back. Maybe she's with another man, maybe she's on the run again. I don't know. And I'm not interested, either.